My name's Chris and I work with along with the Community Church in Salford, and we're carrying on our reading in 2 Kings today. And today we're reading about 2 miracles. The first miracle is the defeat of the Assyrian armies, and the second miracle is Hezekiah being given 15 more years to live while he's desperately ill. Now, both of these miracles involve a guy called Isaiah, who's a famous prophet who has the biggest prophetic book in the Old Testament. And now, prophets can be scary at times, especially the Old Testament ones, but possibly some from our day as well. And they can be a little strange. You know, Ezekiel, he was quite an odd guy who used to do strange things. But even Isaiah, if you look at Isaiah chapter 20, I think it is, he walked around naked for 2 years to make some kind of prophetic point. And I always imagine that could be quite an awkward thing. I imagine him coming to our church and asking to give some prophetic word or preach to us or something, and that kind of makes things a little bit awkward. And so Isaiah is not a normal guy. He's someone who will just say whatever he thinks God's saying and do whatever he thinks God's doing in order to obey what God's got for him. Well, the thing about prophecy is it can bring us real encouragement. It can bring us real encouragement. So, against all the odds, Isaiah prophesies that Assyria will be defeated. And what Hezekiah's response is that he believes the word of God. And sometimes it's hard, isn't it, to believe when things look impossible. When it looks like everything else is just hopeless. Actually, it's really difficult to believe, but God comes through Isaiah and he says Assyria will be defeated. And so Isaiah brings Hezekiah great encouragement, and then Hezekiah gets to this point where he's about to die. He's so ill, desperately ill, and then Isaiah turns up again. And you imagine Hezekiah like, yes, Isaiah's here to give me another prophecy that against all the odds I'll recover. And Isaiah comes to him and he says, yeah, you're going to die, so just sort your life out on all your affairs, because you're going to die quite soon. And Hezekiah's like, yeah, that's not quite the word that I was looking for. And so Hezekiah gets on his knees before God, and he's in tears, and he says, God, please spare me. And even before Isaiah leaves the palace, God speaks to him and says, come back and say to Hezekiah, you're not going to die, you will live. I've heard your prayers. So in this passage, Hezekiah prays 2 prayers that are answered. And they're desperate prayers. They're both against all the odds. They're both like when the army's about to invade and when he's about to die, and he gets on his knees at the last minute and he says, God, please spare us. And God comes back and he says, I've heard your prayer and I've seen your tears. And maybe you're in a dark situation at the moment, a difficult situation where you think this is impossible, this can never happen. Even in those darkest moments when hope seems lost, we can get on our knees before God, and our prayers and our trust in God can make a huge difference. So maybe you want to do that today.